CBS presents this program in color.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to an all-new episode of The Chronic Rift here on Facebook Live. It's January 28th, 2018. This is your old pal, John S. Drew here, and I'm flying solo one more time for this week. Well, sort of solo, you'll see. We've got ourselves an episode here full of great stuff. A little later on, I'm going to be talking with TV show host Herbie J Pilato about his new show, Then Again with Herbie J Pilato. Plus, Dan Persons is back with a new review of two films, actually. One that's just come to digital release and one that is just hitting theaters. But before we begin all that, just like with any episode of the show here, I got to bring a little something to the table. Now, as I'm about to take a sip here, by the way, this week's mug, if you can take a look here, from the Mad Monk in New York City. Now, I can't remember if this was a gift from Keith or from Keith's mother, Grace Ann, but I received this over 20, 25 years ago. It's one of my favorite mugs to sip tea from, which I'm doing at the moment because I have been very sick. But now, I want to talk to you about Valentine's Day. How many of you have thought about a Valentine's Day gift yet for your loved one? There's 2.5 weeks left to go. Now, you could go the usual route of flowers, candy, lingerie, if we're still in that culture, a dinner. But have you given some serious thought to a roach? Have you?
Your Valentine deserves the perfect gift. One that takes their breath away, sends shivers down their spine, and curls their toes. So give a gift sure to make them scream. This Valentine's Day, words aren't enough, because flowers wilt and candlelight fades, but roaches are forever. This Valentine's Day, name a roach.
I don't know about you, but my wife is one of the best because when it comes to gift giving, she's not one of these ones for flowers. She's not one of these ones for jewelry. I mean, every once in a while, maybe, but she really doesn't care for that kind of stuff. She's more of a practical gifts kind of person. And I think that's part of the reason why I love her so much. But if I came home and said, honey, I named a roach after you, you could tell there would be a lot of sparks flying, and it wouldn't be the romantic kind. But if you think this is something that your loved one would appreciate, I'll have links up on how you can name a roach after a loved one for this Valentine's Day. What do you think? Let me know over here on the Chronic Rift Facebook page or over at chronicrift.com. Leave your thoughts. We'll talk about it a little more next week. For now, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking with Herbie J Pilato.
This is the Emperor. You're listening to the Sci-Fi Diner podcast. Eat it.
Welcome to the Sci-Fi Diner podcast. Join us, your hosts, Miles P. McLaughlin and Scott Herzog, as we serve up a delightful menu of science fiction interviews and news in the television, movie, DVD, and book world. Test your geek cred with trivia. Top off your meal with the Sci-Fi 5 and 5. Come visit the Sci-Fi Diner podcast at sci-fi-dinerpodcast.com or subscribe to us in iTunes. We're serving up sci-fi from here to the end of the universe.
And welcome back. I'm joined on the line by an author, a TV historian. In fact, he's the president of the Classic TV Preservation Society, and shortly you'll be seeing him as host of Then Again with Herbie J Pilato on the Decades Television Network. If his name escaped you in the title of his show, let me welcome now to the Chronic Rift, Herbie J Pilato. Hey, Herbie.
John, how are you?
I am doing well, my friend. Thank you so much for being one of my first interview guests here on the new Chronic Rift Facebook Live podcast here.
I am so honored, John. I mean, I have been a fan of yours, and I'm so glad that we recently finally got to meet in person in Los Angeles.
Yes, we did.
So I'm just,
I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
No, it was a delight to meet you. You are everything in person that you sound like in the pod world, if that's a phrase.
Well, I have to admit, Herbie, one thing I did get a little stoked about when I was at that event, and the event we're talking about was the VIP event they had for the opening of the Hollywood Museum Batman 66 exhibit, which I've mentioned now a couple of times here on the Chronic Rift, as well as, of course, over on my Batcave podcast. One of the things I did enjoy most about the evening that was a personal ego boost for me was having people come up to me, and when I said, my name, they immediately, I didn't even have to get into, I'm the host of the Batcave podcast. They were like, oh my gosh, I listened to the Batcave podcast. I love what you do.
Isn't that great? Isn't that great?
It's a great feeling.
Well, you know what it is, John? You're a sincere guy, and you have a sincere respect for the product and the topics and the subjects that you talk about and address, and you're knowledgeable, and people respect that.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I really do. But listen, we're not here to talk about me. I want to talk about you, and I want to talk about this TV show, Then Again, with Herbie J Pilato. Now, how did the whole thing come about in terms of getting the show on the Decades Network? I know you have been, through the Classic TV Preservation Society, been a longtime champion of classic television. But now you're getting this opportunity to talk with various stars who appeared in many of the TV shows we love from the past.
Yes. Well, Then Again with Herbie J Pilato actually came about from a weekly live event that I used to do in Burbank, California, at the Burbank Barnes & Noble.
I remember those.
I had done... Excuse me?
I remember those. I remember when you were promoting those and such, and I would often share those on my Facebook page as well. So that is the origins of it. I had a feeling there was something to that.
Yes. Well, I always wanted to do a talk show like they used to do talk shows, where you actually give the guest the opportunity to speak and to talk, instead of, just having it be a plug for this or a plug for that, or one joke after the next where the host tries to outwit the guest and not let them talk at all. So when I started doing the live events, which really came from my relationship with Barnes & Noble and the book signings that I would do with them for my previous books, I knew that I wanted to make it really a focus where we could sit down in a relaxed atmosphere and allow the guest to be the star, So really it started as just a 4-week event in July 2015, when Barnes & Noble across the country was doing like pop culture events. And they said, Herbie, would you come and do something on what we call Throwback Thursdays for the month of July? And I said, sure, what does it involve? And they said, well, just you can come in and bring in any guest that you like, and if they have a book to sell, they can sell your book, or they can sell their books, and you can sell your books, and everything would be hunky-dory. I'm like, great. So I got a few actors, including Cindy Williams, who had her I, Shirley book, I believe, from her Laverne and Shirley memoir, beyond that as well. Peter Mark Richmond, if anybody knows classic TV, he did every guest spot on every classic TV show from the 60s and 70s, right, and people like that. So at the end of 4 weeks, the crowd who was showing up for these events started being consistent, and I said to the Barnes & Noble manager, I'm like, well, we can't stop doing this. I said, people are expecting this to be every week. So we kept on doing it. And coming weeks featured Kathy Garver from Family Affair and Larry Matthews and Lydia Cornell from Too Close for Comfort, and, Larry Wilcox from Chips. And so here it is, all of a sudden now we're in December, and I say, we got to do something special. And so I got everybody who came on the show, or most of them, and we did like a Christmas special. And by the way, I'm really not making any money. I'm just selling a few books here and there, but I'm investing in these events that, I'm organizing. It's costing me money to do it, but I'm having such a great time. I've got a little focus that this is my thing to do every Thursday, and I was content with that. I was like, okay, this is not a bad thing if I'm going to be talking to like Dawn Wells on a Thursday night, and having people there talk about Gilligan's Island too. I'm like, okay, this works.
Right.
So with the Christmas event, I didn't want it to be special. Everybody showed up. It was fantastic. I mean, I even got some of the studios to sponsor it with like DVD prizes of classic TV shows and stuff. And then at the end of the event, Joel Eisenberg, the great Joel Eisenberg, writer-producer who had been one of my guests on the show and who's the author of Chronicles of Ara and so many incredible books and products, he says to me at the end, he goes, I want to turn this into a TV show.
Nice.
I'm like, well, Merry Christmas to me, So we just got together, Joel and I, and with his wife, Lori Gersh, who was also devoted to these events. Joel, he showed up a couple times as a guest, but he also would attend, so he was like stalking me. And I'm like, oh, this is good, But obviously he was studying me to see, okay, who is this Herbie J Pilato? And why should I be here every week? And why should everybody be here every week? And there was something in me that he appreciated, and I was blessed with his colleagueship, if that's a word too. And so we went on to do like a pitch reel. He invested in it with his partners, Steve Hillard, another amazing human being who believed in me. And we did a pitch reel, and we took it around, and we brought it. One of the networks was Decades, and we have 6 episodes completed that will soon be airing, and we're just all happy as all get out.
Now, there's something, because like you said, you're content going through doing your Thursdays and stuff because you're enjoying it and such. And then along comes Joel. He offers you this chance to do it and take this as the TV show. Now, obviously, it's a TV show compared to just you being there sort of live at Barnes & Noble and such. How much of, like, the constraints of TV did you have to deal with in terms of whether it be time, whether it be just the way, like, the interview flowed and such? Because, again, you're there at Barnes & Noble. If somebody says something, it's said. There's not much you can say about, well, we'll fix that in post, where now television. So how much of that sort of, didn't it all cramp the Herbie J Pilato style that I know Herbie J Pilato has?
the actual show, did it cramp my style?
In the sense of like the constraints of television and what needs to be done in order to get, I'm assuming 30-minute episodes?
Yeah, so it didn't cramp my style. It actually challenged me to because a live event, a 2-hour live event where everybody's just, sitting around having a good time and we have, the time to really address as many topics as we could,
right,
was definitely different than a half-hour show where you're going to now try to appeal to a mainstream audience in a contemporary world and in a youth-geared world.
Yes.
So it definitely was different, but hopefully the charm of what we did in the live events was savored, and I think we did capture it. And that is something I would like to point out. I mean, to be 57 years old and green thinning hair to get like a TV show is a pretty cool thing in a modern world where the majority of personalities and actors and performers that you see are 23 to 33 years old, you know.
Right.
So I'm so proud of that, and I feel so blessed that Joel and Lori believed in me, and that my amazing director, Steve Akahoshi, who was just like phenomenal with the pitch reel that he put together, just amazing. And ultimately that led to these 6 great episodes that we had, we now have in the can. It was just overall something that developed slowly into what it became without there being any attachment to, are we going to succeed? We just did it. I just did those events without being attached to it becoming anything more than what they were. And we did our shows with our complete hearts. And I think that shows up on screen.
See, now that's good to know, because again, yeah, like you say, you did it because you love it. You did it, I mean, obviously you want this to be successful in the sense that you want people to enjoy it. That to me is success, more than anything else. If people say, hey, this was really good, I enjoyed it, just like with your Barnes & Noble appearances and such, and the stuff you did there, if you could say they enjoyed it, I enjoyed it, then it's a win-win, and you are a success. But obviously, also the Decades Network wants something more of it. So it's good to hear, though, that when it comes to it, Herbie J is still there. It's not, because I'm not like, I don't want to sound like I'm coming down or anything, but I often find, because I teach media studies, how, and I mentioned this actually last week on the podcast, how you might have someone come to Hollywood with the story of a man and woman falling in love, and for whatever reason, maybe it's even got a new twist on it that nobody's ever heard before, but by the time the lawyers get at it, by the time the director gets at it, by the time the marketing department and advertising get at it and such, suddenly it's the story of 2 dogs making their way across country to find their lost owners and discovering friendship along the way.
I hear exactly what you're saying, and it was it was all clear to all of us involved that, my MO is, the Classic TV Preservation Society.
Right.
The books that I've written are not mean-spirited, hurtful, hateful books. All the books, all the information that are in each of my books addresses controversy at times of a person's life that, was in the public eye of the 50s, 60s, and 70s TV shows. But if those controversies are addressed, they are addressed with dignity and, in a very diplomatic and respectful way. All of us have flaws, John. All of us have issues. There's not a perfect human being on the planet, but there's different ways to tell our stories. And one of the ways I've never told anybody's story is exploitive. And that is the same sense of earnestness and integrity that I brought to the TV show from the special events, and certainly adding a quippiness here and there, to keep it hip and contemporary. Do they still say hip? I'm confused. So.
I think so.
So it's just, we try to please everybody,
right,
without losing the essence of where my heart is.
Right. Now, 6 episodes, and you're interviewing those folks who are in these classic television shows that we know and love. Give me some names here. Who are we going to see on your show?
Our first show is Stanley and Barry Livingston, real-life brothers from My 3 Sons. Stanley is like the sweetest guy on the planet, so down to earth. Barry is a super talent and such a trip. So we're excited that they debuted. They were on the debut episode. Future episodes were other episodes include Robert Conrad from Wild Wild West, which, you know, I totally loved as a kid. I mean, who didn't in the 60s? Burt Ward, so full of energy, such a beautiful spirit, such a loving, generous human being from Batman, of course, Robin.
Right.
Yeah, like I have to tell you that, right?
Not me, but yeah, there might be one or two people.
We did a great tribute to Gary Marshall, producer, writer, creator of Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley, and, you know, so many other shows. Marion Ross from Happy Days was on there with us. Cindy Williams did a phone-in. Eddie Mecca from Laverne and Shirley, the Big Ragu. I mean, it was just fantastic. Then we had one of my favorite episodes is Dark Shadows with David Selby,
nice.
Who played Quentin, and the great Catherine Lee Scott, Josette and Maggie Evans, who played Josette Collins and Maggie Evans, and Lara Parker, Angelique. Oh my gosh, I could not believe that I was on the set with these people. I was actually tearing up. They didn't see it, you know, but I was tearing up because I was so honored. And David Selby, oh my gosh, just an amazing guy. He now, by the way, I'm very proud to say, is on the board of directors for the Classic TV Preservation Society. So that's just huge to have him support the nonprofit, which, by the way, is a nonprofit that is dedicated to the positive social influence of classic TV shows. And the website for that is classictvpreserve.org. The others, we did an episode with with Ed Asner for a tribute to Mary Tyler Moore, and Ed is just another amazing guy. Still going, never stops working, quick as all get out, and he was just another trip. I keep on using these words, hip and trip. Can you tell him from the 60s?
Now there's something, because, you know, touching on what you said about the Classic TV Preservation Society and such, and you and I have had discussions about this on Facebook as well, whether it's postings you've done or postings I've done and such, and we both seem to be coming from the same sort of mindset there. Not that we're trying to say, you know, hey, get off my lawn, kids, and things like that when it comes to TV, but there is something to be said about television today. While there may be a lot of smarter television going on in terms of storytelling and such, there isn't that same sort of hopefulness that we saw in a lot of the television shows you and I grew up with. And you bring up Batman, of course. I'm in the middle of rewatching the series again. I mean, it to me stands up the test of time, because yes, it could be hokey, yes, it could be silly, but there was just something wholesome and something hopeful about that show.
Well, I mean, all I can say is I don't think we're going to be talking about The Walking Dead in 50 years.
Okay. That's a fair. Yeah, I would agree.
You know, the incredible amount of love and joy on The Walking Dead, I just don't see addressing that in 5 decades from today. However, that said, there is so much incredible talent out there on the new shows and in the new films. The issue is, for me, now this is my personal opinion, is that all the characters are the same. Everybody's beautiful. Everybody's sarcastic. Everybody rolls their eyes. Everybody's witty and quippy. You know, if you look at the way they edit the shows, everything is quick and edgy, and there's quick camera angles and whatnot. And what I found kind of fascinating a couple years ago with the whole Mad Men thing, they started calling it innovative. And I looked at it and I'm like, okay, it's a great show, but it's not innovative. They're just doing that show like they used to do shows back in the day. You know, they actually just let the camera stay on the actor. You know, there's this calm, where the calm presence where the actor is actually allowed to act, and there's no crazy angles. So I found that kind of humorous that they called that kind of production innovative, when to me it wasn't innovative at all. They were just doing it like they used to do TV shows and movies. And there's no characters that are likable. You know, the performances of these characters are not likable. You know, even though JR was an unlikable character on Dallas, and I say this all the time, but it's the perfect example, you still enjoyed Larry Hagman's performance as an unlikable character because Larry Hagman's performance was likable. Larry was likable in that role of this unlikable character, and I don't see a lot of that today. I see a lot of unlikable characters when I could see it, and what I mean by that is I can't see anything. Everything's so dark all the time. The lighting, and as I'm trying to peer in to see what's going on, you know, getting close up to the TV and turning the flashlight on the screen, I'm also trying to hear what everybody's saying because everybody's mumbling. And I don't know if it has to do with the way they mix TV shows today sound-wise, or if that's like the new thing where everybody's supposed to mumble. I realize you need to have a realistic dialogue tone, but dude, talk and speak with diction slowly. Turn the lights on so we can see everybody, and let's do a TV show.
Right. Okay, so now you are also an author. In fact, you mentioned Ed Asner in your celebration of the Mary Tyler Moore Show. You've got a book coming up, and I want to talk about some of your other books in a moment, but I want to talk about the new book you're working on the life of Mary Tyler Moore.
Yes, very, very excited about this. I have been wanting to do it for a long time, and I have connected with a wonderful publisher who just has such a respect for writers and authors and my particular vision for this book, that when they met with me, I was like, wow, this is an incredible opportunity to connect people who about writers and have so much respect for writers that, you know, and my vision for the book, that I had to sign with them. So yes, it's coming out in the summer, and it's called With Her Smile, the Mary Tyler Moore story. And I've already interviewed Joyce Bulafon, who played wife to Gavin MacLeod on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. I've interviewed Gavin. I'm in the process of interviewing Carl Reiner. So I'm trying to do with this book and say in this book what has not been said in Mary's own biographies that she wrote, or autobiographies,
right?
Nor any of the books that have already been written about the Dick Van Dyke Show or the Mary Tyler Moore Show. This is going to be about Mary's life and career before, during, and after those shows, and all that encompasses everything from when she did Richard Diamond Private Eye, to Ordinary People in feature films, to back to when they did the Dick Van Dyke Show Revisited special in 2004. So it's going to be all-encompassing, and again, one of the things that I do pride myself is that, yes, we're going to address controversial topics, but we're going to do so with respect and dignity. Number one, Mary's plastic surgery, which she herself addressed in her own book very honestly. So things like that will be talked about and discussed.
Now, that's one thing, too, that you are actually very thorough with the books you do. You're meticulous to a point where you want to make sure the information is correct. I'm holding up here, actually, you can't see it, but I am holding up here my copy of Dashing, Daring, and Debonair, of which I contributed some pieces to your chapters on Adam West, Burt Ward, and Lee Majors, and I remember going back and forth, and you were like, John, get this right when you send this to me, and that's what I love about it. It's also why, when it comes to another book of yours that I and many fans alike treasure and actually consider in many respects a definitive book on the subject, is your Bionic book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all of that, and certainly thank you for the contributions that you made to Dashing, Daring, and Debonair, and your commentary was just phenomenal. I try to be thorough, John, and I try to be entertaining as well. And I just, when I start a book, I say to myself, what would I want to see in a book about Mary Tyler Moore or Elizabeth Montgomery or the $6 Million Man, the Bionic Woman? I didn't want to do books that were just trivia books,
right,
or fan books. I wanted to really do books that would, again, pay tribute to these shows and yet give an objective, as objective as I could be, about these particular shows, what they mean, what they meant to the fans, what they meant to the stars, and the producers, and to go beyond a trivia book.
Right. By the way, did I ever mention to you, the author Robert J. Sawyer?
Yes, I do. Great guy. Robert
has a great deal of praise for the Bionic book. It's because it's been mentioned every once in a while whenever he brings up $6 Million Man in his rewatching and such, and somebody will always comment on, you should really see this book if you enjoyed the series, and they always bring up your book, and then Robert's like, I have my copy. It's a wonderful addition to my library.
Oh yeah, no, he has reached out to me, and we've had many conversations, and I am nothing but honored, really, to have Robert say those incredible things about my work, and specifically about the Bionic book. Which, by the way, was how Joel and Eisenberg and I actually got together. He was a fan of that book. Mm-hmm. He felt it was one of the best entertainment companion books that he had read, and that made me feel wonderful as well. So I was honored with that. And I got a lot of help with that book too. I mean, Matt Hankinson and Brendan Slattery, they were incredible sources for me in getting, certain facts and whatnot, and made suggestions. And the book would not have been what it became without their help. So I definitely wanted to mention their names.
Now, one particular topic of which you've actually written 2 books, or should I say one particular person, is Elizabeth Montgomery. And I know you have a great deal of affection for her. What is it about Elizabeth Montgomery that, to you, you did one on her life and then one on the TV show Bewitched itself?
Yes. She had soul. When you watched Bewitched, there was something about her that, as Samantha, that was so believable in that world. And with any creative property, for it to make sense, especially within the supernatural or science fiction world, as long as everything makes sense within those worlds and it's explained, that makes it credible. I call it the logic within the illogic. And that's one of the things that made Bewitched great, is that whatever happened in Samantha's world made sense. If she put a spell on somebody, only she could remove it, not Endora. Of all the characters' names, all the witch characters ended in A. Things like that. It just was all very well thought out. So that attracted me to the show, and as well as growing up in the 1960s when I was bullied. I was a cute little kid, and I used to get unfortunately beat up, by a lot of jealous little boys because I had all the little girls after me, and I could also sing and dance, and that was not something that was appreciated by the mainstream in the mid 60s of the inner city of Rochester, New York. When I grew up essentially in a tough neighborhood, but I somehow identified with Samantha, who felt isolated, and I think a lot of minority groups felt or identified with Samantha and her sense of again, earnest and just a deep sense of who she was. She in many ways was bullied by the mortal world, or she felt bullied by the mortal world in a sense. All witches did, even though Andorra would look down on mortals. The mortal world was not ready for witches, and maybe the mortal world wasn't ready for Herbie J Pilato at the time. Growing up, I don't know if they're ready now. But in any case, there was that prejudice angle that attracted me. There was the isolated angle that attracted me. And there was also the sense that Elizabeth Montgomery as Samantha had all these powers, and she could have anything and anybody that she wanted, but she loved this regular guy who couldn't give her anything that she couldn't zap or twitch up. And that was like, wow, to find a woman like that is kind of an amazing thing. So there was that sense of it. And when I actually met Elizabeth and she sat down with me for these like 4 or 5 interviews at her house, it was just amazing. She was just the same type of down-to-earth person. And she came from a very wealthy background, her mother and father. Her father was a movie star, Robert Montgomery. Her mother was a Broadway star, Elizabeth Allen. And they raised her to be approachable and accessible, and she took that personality and brought that to Samantha. So it was just, to actually meet her and realize that she was just as wonderful and sweet in real life as Samantha was a great thing. And she donated her time and her money to many charitable organizations. Yeah. She did so much for the disabled. She was one of the first celebrities who did charitable work for those suffering from AIDS. So she was just an incredible human. And she made witches, we're getting back to the whole likable thing, she made witches believable and likable because she was believable and likable in that role.
Herbie, you just blew my mind with that fact about how all the witches, their names ended in A. I never caught that. I've never.
Well, that was like that. It's okay because that was a subtle thing.
and then it kind of, and again, because this is the English teacher and me doing this here, that then makes sense why Alice Kravitz is Alice, because her name begins with an A. So she's like the exact opposite, and her mind can't process everything Samantha and the others are doing.
Interesting. Actually, her name was Gladys Kravitz.
Oh, that's right. It was Gladys. What am I doing? Oh, no.
So that blows that theory, unfortunately.
There you go. That's it. Forget it.
She was Alice Pierce in real life.
That's it.
Playing Gladys Kravitz.
That's why.
But that's okay. Let's go with she was. We took the G from good, from Gladys.
Oh, there goes everything. Oh. And I'm in the midst of actually rewatching the show. I'm in the middle of the 4th season right now. And you can see, because those first 2 seasons in black and white are just so precious because they really weren't sitcom-y. It was only once we got to the 3rd and 4th and when the color started and such that the show took on a slightly different tone. Samantha herself, though, and Elizabeth Montgomery's portrayal never changed.
Well, it's interesting you say all that. And I see the show as 3 different shows.
Okay.
I see it as the first 2 seasons are the black and white years.
Right.
And then the first 3 color seasons are the Dick York color years. And then there's the Dick Sargent color years.
Right.
So it's 3 different shows, and it switched. And those first 2 seasons, to me, are my favorite for a lot of reasons, because it really was more of a romantic story between Samantha and Darren. It really was more of actually a sitcom about a situation comedy about 2 people in love.
Right.
It became more flamboyant, I guess, for lack of a better word, that was on demand from ABC. When they went to color, they wanted more magic, more witchiness, because really those first 2 years was kind of sort of like Bell, Book, and Candle. And then when Dick York left the series and was replaced by Dick Sargent, then they went to, Salem for the Witches Convention, and they started doing a lot of really wild things, but still the heart of it was still Samantha loved Darren for who he was and not for what he could buy her. Right. So that was still there. But yes, things literally became, and figuratively, more colorful as the show went on. And of course, they started remaking episodes towards the end there, which I kind of never understood, and I kind of wish they just would have hired a new set of writers in the last couple of years, but that didn't happen.
No. I just watched the episode. I forget the exact title. And If They Had Never Met, it's the one where Dora tries to show Samantha that Darren would be all right without her if they'd never met, and we get the return of Sheila, I think was his former fiance.
Yep.
Oh, fantastic.
With an S.
Yes, with an S. Fantastic. But and when I say start to become more, with the magic and this, there's still those episodes like that, and even the prior episode where, and Sheila was in that one too, because they went to another dinner of Sheila's, and she said, come casual this time again, and Samantha wouldn't fall for it, but it was the I loved it. I loved it.
Well, you see, because in those episodes that you mentioned, and many more, there was 3-dimensional characters. I love I, Jimmy Genie, and I think it's a wonderful series. But it did happen because of Bewitched, and I explained that in my original Bewitched book, that, Saul Sachs was actually approached about doing a second Witch on NBC, and he didn't want to do that, and that's when they went to Sidney Sheldon, and he came up with I, Jimmy Genie. After, by the way, he had a meeting with Elizabeth Montgomery and Bill Asher to see if it was okay for him to do that. Bill didn't care. Elizabeth wasn't that crazy about the idea, but she never held anything against Barbara or Larry Hagman. But Jeannie was more fun and bubbly, and it was a more of a physical comedy show. Yes. Not that there wasn't physical comedy in Bewitched, but the characters on Bewitched were more dimensional, and there was more heart. And you really, in the 5th season of I, Jimmy Genie, it kind of was trying to morph into Bewitched, because they get married, Tony Nelson and Jeannie.
Right.
So both shows exist joyfully, but Bewitched, obviously, in my eyes, had more heart and more realism. You can have realism in a fantasy.
Right, exactly. And of course, it gives us also, just like with other 60s questions of Marianne or Ginger, is it Samantha or Jeannie? And I always get a kick out of people who say Jeannie, and I'm just like, really? I love Barbara Eden. I love her, but
no. Look, Barbara Eden is gorgeous.
Yes.
There's no two ways about it, and she still is gorgeous.
Yes.
Not recently, but a few years ago, I remember, I don't know where she was, but she showed up at somewhere in Australia, and former President Clinton was there with her on stage, and she was in her genie outfit at like 78 years old,
wow.
looking amazing.
Wow.
And, you know, the crowd went wild, and all I could think of was, man, if Elizabeth was alive and she showed up at some kind of event like that in her black Samantha flying suit,
yeah.
that would have been it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, everybody just would have freaked out. It just wasn't meant to be. It just wasn't meant to be. She died much too young.
Yes.
And it was heartbreaking. Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And she died shortly after my father died. So 1995 was a tough year.
Oof. Yeah. No, definitely though. You're absolutely right. Way too young. I was shocked when it happened because, and I know she was older than the Samantha I saw on the TV show, but the woman you still saw didn't appear older to me. So my mindset was even more so. It was like, wow, she's way too young to have passed.
Yeah, it's just, well, one of the things that her children said, specifically Rebecca Asher, who was an amazing director, was the thing that they just will never forget is her voice. You know, Elizabeth had an amazingly unique voice. When I had been trying to talk with her and interview her because what happened was Bill Asher was going to do a new Bewitched show in like 1988.
Right.
And I had written a reunion movie for Samantha and Darren at that time, and I got him the script, and he absolutely loved it, and he hired me to be on this new show. Unfortunately, the new show lost financing, but I had all this Bewitched energy, and so I said, how about we do a book about the original series instead of doing a reunion movie? And Elizabeth was all for that. And he actually he talked with her if it was okay for him to give me her phone number. So he gives me her phone number. Imagine, Elizabeth Montgomery's phone number I had in my hand. So I call her 6 months, every week. I don't know if it's that long, maybe 3 months. Doing my laundry, and I went downstairs in my little apartment in Santa Monica at the time, and I came back upstairs and I turned the machine on, my telephone machine, which, you know, I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but it was a machine that recorded messages, right. Big contraption, and I saw the light flashing, the red light that was on those machines, and I pressed it, and I heard, "Hi, this is Lizzie Montgomery. This is crazy." And she hung up. And I'm like, oh my God. Okay? Oh my God. So I call her immediately back and I said, I'm sorry I missed your call. I was doing my laundry. And she said, as you should.
And I could just see her saying that.
And that was, from the minute we met, talked on the phone, that spirit, that carefree, down-to-earth spirit was evident immediately. And we just became friends. A very short friendship because she died so young, but she appreciated, you know, what I saw in the show and what the show was about and what it meant to me and what I said I represented what it meant to so many. Because the first question she asked me when we finally met was, why are you doing this? And I told her, you know, everything that I said about the prejudice and the true love between Samantha and Darren. And she goes, okay, because Bill Asher told me that I really needed to talk to Herbie, and he never tells me that I need to talk to anybody. So for him to say you need to talk to Herbie was big.
Wow.
Was big.
Wow. Fantastic. Herbie, I'm running out of time here. I'm about to hit the wall soon. As far as the show, then again, with Herbie J Pilato, when are we looking at? I know we've been waiting for this for a little while now. Has there been any discussion on an actual premiere date yet?
The episodes are complete and done and edited, and we're ready to submit. And we're waiting now to hear an air date, which will be later in 2018. It's going to happen in 2018.
Cool. Very cool. And Herbie, if people want to, again, just to repeat for them, get more information about the Classic Television or Classic TV Preservation Society, how do they go about doing that?
They can either contact me through my website, herbiejpilato.com, which, by the way, anyone can order personally signed copies of any of my books, any of the Bewitched books, Elizabeth Montgomery's books, the Kung Fu books, the Bionic book, and the Dashing, Daring, and Debonair and Gidget's books as well. Or they can go to classictvpreserve.org and find out about the Classic TV Preservation Society. Or they can go to emmys.org and see all of my articles on classic TV shows that I've written for emmys.org over the last few years. So herbiejpilato.com, classictvpreserve.org, or emmys.org.
Herbie, thank you so much for doing this. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, John. You're the best. BEST.
Folks, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to wrap up the show.
Emergency. Batman speaking. Warning all of you to brace yourselves for big news.
The biggest.
Tell them, Robin.
Holy superlatives, Batman! It's really exciting.
Greetings, citizens. Join me, your old bat chum, John S. Drew, on my journey to discover what it is I love about the classic 1966 Batman television series on the Batcave podcast. Each episode, I'm joined by a guest host as we review the classic television series. There's a new episode every 2 weeks. Same bat time, same bat channel on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or at thebatcavepodcast.com.
Holy memoranda, folks. Make a note not to miss it.
Good thinking, Robin.
And we're back live now here on Facebook Live. With a few minutes left in the show, let's roll out Dan Persons here. Well, not roll him out. He hasn't been drinking and all, but he's got a couple of movie reviews, taking a look at the recent release of the new version of Stephen King's It, and a new movie that's coming out this week called Have a Nice Day. Kind of Quentin Tarantino meets anime?
I'm Dan Persons, movie reviewer for Hour of the Wolf. I don't remember much of the 1990 miniseries version of Stephen King's It. One of the things I do remember is the end of the first part, during the ultimate confrontation between Pennywise, the demonic clown who lives in the sewers of a small Maine town, and the children he has been preying upon. One of the kids, the asthmatic Eddie, aims his inhaler at Pennywise, declares, "This is battery acid," and sprays it in the demon's face. It is a significant moment. As I remember it, Eddie, because of his frailty, was a prime target for Pennywise's most merciless attacks, the demon feasting on children's personal fears as much as their flesh. In that one action, weakness became strength, and made the vanquishing of the demon by the band of children, dubbed the Losers Club, who follow suit in turning their own fears against Pennywise, a powerful emotional statement beyond the basic good versus evil equation. There's no battery acid moment in the 2017 version of It, now available on demand. The final confrontation is full of action and focuses on the idea that the kids must band together to fight this evil. And director Andy Muschietti does elsewhere focus on the problems that each of these kids must contend with, but he frequently fails to draw the line between those dramas and how it spurs the supernatural malevolence. There's nothing like the creepy scene in the miniseries where one child sees his dead father recede across the surface of a pond, gradually turning into Pennywise in the process. The scares the kids and the audience are subjected to feel much more generic. This could be any horror film, not necessarily one with King's unique, hometown perspective. It's all nicely done. The film is handsomely mounted. The young actors are all quite good, and Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise gives a great, disturbing performance, not the least featuring his apparent knack to turn the act of smiling into 13 discrete, creepy motions. It 2017 is certainly a decent horror film, but without the emotional punch that would have made it a better-than-standard Stephen King adaptation. Last week, I obsessed over auteurism. This week, I'm getting back to the notion of how well a story suits its medium. Have a Nice Day, which opens theatrically in New York tomorrow, is a Chinese animated film centering around a group of gangsters, hitmen, couriers, and other assorted lowlifes, and the bag of money they are all pursuing. It's a wickedly entertaining story filled with great, mostly loathsome characters, and featuring a clean animation style that looks like an indie graphic novel was set into motion, something emphasized by the fact that the only genre element to the story, a pair of computer-assisted eyeglasses that can do X-ray scans along with serving up heads-up displays, feels very much like a graphic novel conceit. This is a more laconic exercise than something Quentin Tarantino might do. There's practically no background soundtrack throughout the film, the violence is blunt and offhand, but it should be noted that Tarantino took this type of pulpy material and did it live action. That's not really a knock at Have a Nice Day's director, Liu Jian, for his choice of medium. I really did like Have a Nice Day, as much for its spare deployment of animation to tell its tale as the tale itself. Maybe, sometimes, the medium adapts to the story as much as vice versa. For Hour of the Wolf, I'm Dan Persons, #ITMFA.
All right, so here's the thing. I'm not a Stephen King fan, so I can't even begin to speak to it one way or the other, the benefits with that in the original film, because I never saw the original film. As for Have a Nice Day, the visuals alone have my attention. So it's certainly something I'm definitely going to check out just for that. And also, if it's got a Tarantino vibe to it, I'm in. So we'll take a look, and maybe along the way I'll let you know. If you've watched it, let us know over here at chronicrift.com or on the Facebook page what you thought of the movie. Now, a couple of things I just want to say really quick in wrapping up the show here. First and foremost, I need to apologize to everybody who had signed on to the initial feed. Unfortunately, I changed up the settings and screwed everything up so that when I went back to try and get on the feed, it didn't work, so I had to create a new stream. So many of you are probably going to be watching this a lot later than you probably intended. You maybe were hoping to watch it live. I apologize for that. As I'm learning, I'm getting better. Another thing I'm also learning about is sound. I really need to work on the sound here if I'm going to do this live. This does not work for me. I sound like I'm in a tunnel. And the one I did with Herbie, I sound like someone sitting on my face. I need to find the medium there. What I really need is a great sound engineer, but since I'm doing this on my own. Now, one thing I could do is I could go back to my 1970s game show mic. It's not hooked up right now, but I could use that, or should I just save it for home game show version podcast? One other thing, too, I wanted to say really quick is a special thanks to Lana Tunes. Lana Tunes created the opening credits you saw at the beginning of the podcast if you were watching it on Facebook Live. It's got a very 90s feel to it. We're going to tweak it a little over the coming weeks, but what I love is it evokes the whole public access days back when we were doing the show in the 90s, those, wonderful 4 years. I miss them. I do miss them. Now, folks, stay tuned. We've got Planet of the Apes coming next week. Dan Greenfield from 13th Dimension will be joining me here, plus a player to be named, I hope, so that we can have a nice little conversation going here between three people talking about the 50th anniversary of Planet of the Apes. So until next time, folks, thank you so much for listening. Make sure you're checking us out on Facebook, Twitter. I'm even going to get the Instagram going, I promise. The Chronic Rift is back, and I'm hoping for bigger and better things. Until next time, though, take care, and thanks for listening.